Imagine being pinned down in a pitch-black canyon, deep behind enemy lines, surrounded by a force that knows every jagged peak better than you do. You're part of an elite special operations team, and right now, your survival hinges on a radio call that feels like a death sentence. High above, the thunderous roar of an F-15E Strike Eagle tears through the atmosphere. It's a billion-dollar masterpiece of engineering, the ultimate apex predator of the skies. But in this narrow, twisting valley, it is completely powerless.
The problem? It's simply too fast.
At 500 knots, the pilot has only a split second to identify a target among the shadows before he's already miles past the engagement zone. He's trying to perform brain surgery with a lightning bolt, and the rescue helicopters, they won't even cross the border. These ridges are infested with insurgents armed with thousands of Russian-made shoulder-fired missiles. For a standard transport bird, this isn't a rescue mission, it's a one-way trip to a crash site. The tactical situation is a nightmare. Your perimeter is shrinking. The dirt is kicking up from heavy machine gun fire, and the air is thick with the smell of cordite and desperation. It's a domino effect of failure. The jets can't see you, the choppers can't reach you, and the enemy is closing the gap. But then, a low, bass-heavy hum begins to vibrate through your chest. It isn't the piercing shriek of a turbofan or the frantic slapping of rotor blades. It's the unmistakable growl of 4 massive Allison turboprops. Looming out of the midnight sky is a giant, lumbering silhouette that looks more like a flying warehouse than a lethal weapon. It's an AC-130, a repurposed cargo plane that's slow, ungraceful, and decades old. Why would the most advanced military on Earth trust a literal truck with wings to save its best men in the middle of a hornet's nest? What happens when this massive beast begins to tilt, banking into a steep, 45-degree angle directly over your head? Well, the answer lies in a terrifying marriage of ancient geometry and modern devastation.
It's 02 a.m.
Total darkness to the naked eye. The sky above the jagged ridges is a vast, silent void, but through the forward-looking infrared sensors, the FLIR, of an AC-130 Ghostrider, the world is glowing in ghostly shades of white-hot and charcoal gray. The crew isn't looking for shapes, they're looking for heat. They're looking for the thermal signature of an idling engine, the warm breath of a soldier huddled in a ditch, or the friction of a tire against the desert floor. And they found it. A convoy of 3 armored vehicles is snaking through a narrow pass, blissfully unaware that they are being watched by a godlike eye from 4 miles up. The pilot banks the massive bird, locking it into that iconic, relentless left-hand turn. Suddenly, the silence of the night is obliterated. It doesn't start with a single bang. It starts with a terrifying mechanical hum. That's the 25mm GA-GO-22, a Gatling gun, beginning its deadly rotation. At 3,000 rounds per minute, it doesn't sound like individual gunshots. It sounds like the Earth itself is being ripped apart by a gargantuan chainsaw. Firefall of tracers pours down from the clouds, a vertical river of lead that shreds the lead vehicle before the driver can even touch the brakes. This is the legendary spooky Hertiage in action, delivering a precise application of violence that makes traditional carpet bombing look like a child's game. But that's just the opening act. As the enemy convoy panics, diving for cover among the rocks, the crew brings out the heavy hitter, the 105mm M102 howitzer. Take a second to process that. This is a massive field artillery piece, the kind usually towed by heavy trucks or positioned in fixed fire bases on the ground. But here, it is bolted to the floor of a moving airplane. When it fires, the entire 100,000-pound airframe shudders. It's a rhythmic, deep-chested boom that echoes through the cockpit and vibrates in the very marrow of the soldiers on the ground. In the infrared view, the impact isn't just a hit, it's an erasure. A single 105mm shell doesn't just stop a target, it makes the target cease to exist in a blinding blossom of white-hot shrapnel and high explosives. The contrast is jarring, the absolute, freezing stillness of the high-altitude cockpit versus the hellish, chaotic inferno being unleashed on the valley floor below. Suddenly, the FLIR screen flashes white. Bright, needle-like streaks of light rise from a hidden tree line near the ridge. Manpads. The enemy is finally fighting back, launching shoulder-fired infrared missiles into the blackness, desperately hoping to catch the beast in the sky. But the Ghostrider is not a sitting duck. The onboard missile warning systems detect the launch in a fraction of a second. Automatically, thousands of magnesium Teflon flares eject from the fuselage, blooming in the night air like the glowing feathers of a gargantuan celestial bird. In military circles, they call this the angel wings. To the trapped bit kick team on the ground, it looks like divine intervention, a halo of light protecting their savior. To the heat-seeking missiles, it is a blinding wall of decoy energy that lures them harmlessly away from the engines. The AC-130 doesn't break its bank. It doesn't run for the border. It stays in the pocket, pivoting on its axis like a hungry shark, circling its prey, refusing to let the enemy breathe. The 105mm continues to bark, the 30mm Bushmaster joins the chorus, and the valley floor is transformed into a lunar landscape of fire and craters. It is a relentless, mathematical application of air power. There is no respite. There is no pause to reload or recalibrate. If you're caught in the crosshairs of a Ghostrider, your fate was sealed the moment the pilot locked the pylon. The air inside the cabin is thick with the smell of spent gunpowder and the intense heat of the brass casings piling up on the floor. But the mission continues. They will loiter for hours if they have to, because the one thing an AC-130 has that a fighter jet doesn't is time. But wait, think about the physics at play here for a moment. You have a massive, lumbering cargo plane flying at nearly 200 miles an hour, held in a constant steep bank. All while wind shear, air density, and the massive recoil of a howitzer are fighting the airframe every single second, yet that 105mm shell, dumb piece of steel and explosive with no guidance system of its own, impacts with the precision of a sniper rifle, hitting a moving truck from 4 miles away in the dead of night. How is that even possible? How does a crew manage to keep a fixed point on the ground in their sights, while the very platform they are standing on is tilting toward the earth? How do they account for the Coriolis effect or the sheer drop of a heavy shell in a crosswind? Well, to understand why the AC-130 is the undisputed king of close air support, you have to look past the guns and into the math. You have to understand the secret behind the Pylon Turn, a maneuver so precise it turns a cargo plane into a surgical instrument of war. So how does a lumbering cargo plane achieve the surgical precision of a high-end sniper rifle? It's not just about the pilot's steady hand or the crew's experience. It's about a terrifying marriage of classical physics and advanced digital choreography. To understand why the AC-130 is the undisputed king of the night, you have to look past the fire and into the math. You have to understand the secret behind the Pylon Turn, a maneuver so precise it turns a 100,000-pound airframe into a rotating axis of death. Think about this for a second. Imagine you have a ball tied to the end of a long string. You stand in one spot and start spinning that ball in a circle around you. The ball is the AC-130. The string is the pilot's line of sight, and you, standing at the center, are the target. As long as you keep that string taut and the speed constant, the ball stays at an exact fixed distance from you at every single point in its orbit. In military aviation, we call this a point-centered orbit, but it's more famously known as the Pylon Turn. But here's the twist. On a standard fighter jet, the guns are mounted in the nose, pointing straight ahead. To hit a target, the pilot has to fly directly at it, fire, and then pull away before they crash or get shot down. They get one pass, one split-second window of opportunity. But the AC-130 is different. Its entire arsenal, the 25mm Gatling gun, the 40mm Bofors, and the massive 105mm howitzer, is mounted on the left side of the aircraft, perpendicular to the direction of flight. Why the left side? It's a legacy of the very first gunships in Vietnam, where pilots sat on the left and needed to look out their side window to aim. But today, it serves a much more lethal purpose. By banking the plane into a continuous left-hand turn, the pilot can keep those side-mounted guns locked onto a single point on the ground indefinitely. As the plane circles, the guns never have to reacquire the target. They are already there.
They are always there. It is a persistent 360-degree umbrella of firepower that never blinks.
But simply flying in a circle isn't enough. You're dealing with a massive aircraft flying at nearly 200 miles per hour, miles above the Earth, while firing unguided, dumb artillery shells. How do you ensure that a shell fired from a tilting, vibrating platform actually hits a moving truck 4 miles away? The answer lies in the bank angle. In a perfect pylon turn, the AC-130 typically locks into a 45-degree bank. This isn't just a comfortable angle for the pilot, it's a mathematical necessity. At 45 degrees, the forces of lift, gravity, and centrifugal force reach a sweet spot. If the bank is too shallow, the guns are pointing too far out toward the horizon. If it's too steep, they're pointing too close to the plane's own belly. But at 45 degrees, the geometry aligns perfectly. The pilot uses a specialized sight, once a simple grease pencil mark on the window, now a highly advanced heads-up display to hook the target. Once that hook is set, the plane isn't just flying, it's pivoting on an invisible axis. But then, you have the leverage problem, and this is where the aha moment really hits. When that 1/5mm howitzer fires, it generates a massive amount of recoil. It's enough force to actually push the entire aircraft sideways in the air. At the same time, you have the Coriolis effect, the rotation of the Earth itself, and the varying air density between the high-altitude plane and the ground-level target. If a human were trying to calculate all of this on the fly, they would miss every single time. This is where the brain of the Ghostrider takes over, the fire control suite. We're talking about an array of mission computers, including the APQ-180 multi-mode radar and high-resolution infrared sensors. These computers are performing thousands of differential equations every second. They are measuring the exact airspeed, the precise pitch and roll of the wings, the ambient wind speed at 3 different altitudes, and even the temperature of the gunpowder inside the shells. The computer doesn't just tell the crew when to fire, it actually offsets the aim. It knows that because the plane is moving left, the shell will inherit that lateral momentum. So it calculates a lead point, aiming the gun at a spot where the target will be by the time the shell finishes its 5-second flight through the atmosphere. It's a deadly game of predictive geometry. But here's the terrifying reality, the twist that most people never realize. In this pylon turn, the margin for error is effectively zero. Think about the leverage. Because the plane is 4 miles away from the target, even the tiniest vibration is magnified 1,000 times by the time the shell reaches the ground. If the pilot's bank angle slips by just 1 single degree, a movement so small you wouldn't even feel it in the cockpit. The point of impact on the ground shifts by over 100 meters. 1 degree of error is the difference between taking out an enemy bunker and hitting a friendly unit or a civilian structure. This isn't just combat, it's deadly math. The crew of an AC-130 aren't just soldiers, they are technicians of destruction. The pilot has to maintain a perfectly coordinated turn, keeping the ball in the center of the turn and slip indicator, while the fire control officer manages the digital ballistic solution. They are fighting the wind, fighting the recoil, and fighting the very laws of physics to maintain that perfect 45-degree tilt. When everything aligns, the bank, the speed, the computer's logic, and the crew's nerves, the result is what you saw in the valley. A relentless vertical rain of steel that hits with surgical precision, turn after turn, circle after circle. The enemy can run, they can hide behind rocks, or they can dive into trenches, but they can't escape the geometry. As long as the Ghostrider is in its orbit, the math is against them, and once that dance is finished, once the last 105mm shell has found its mark and the leverage of physics has done its work, the results are absolute. The valley isn't just cleared, it's dismantled. The chaos of the night is replaced by a cold, calculated silence. But don't let the technical beauty of the turn fool you. The pylon turn is just the method. The end goal is something much more visceral, a total systemic shock designed to ensure that the only ones walking out of that valley are the ones the AC-130 came to protect. When the Ghostrider finally breaks its orbit and levels its wings, the valley below doesn't just fall silent, it enters a state of total systemic shock. The mathematical dance has ended, and in its wake, there is no enemy left to fire back. Through the cooling infrared sensors, you can see the result of a 100,000-pound machine pivoting around a single point of light. Every bunker is now a crater. Every technical truck is a twisted skeleton of steel, and every threat has been surgically erased from the map. It's the kind of absolute destruction that only happens when you combine the raw firepower of a battleship with the precision of a scalpel. We often focus on the sleek, supersonic stealth of 5th-generation fighters like the F-35. But the AC-130 is a stark reminder that in the high-stakes world of close air support, speed is a luxury, but persistence is a weapon. It's a cargo airframe from the 1950s transformed into a midnight god, a mechanical beast that refuses to blink or leave until the job is done. For the elite teams trapped in that hornet's nest, the low growl of those turboprops isn't just noise, it's the sound of an unbreakable promise. In the US military, there is a simple rule: no one gets left behind. The AC-130 is that rule made of aluminum, sensors, and gunpowder. It is the guarantee that if you are pinned down in a dark canyon thousands of miles from home, the Pentagon won't just send help, they will move the entire sky to bring you back. Military engineering is reaching levels of terrifying genius, and the Ghostrider is only the beginning. If you want to go deeper inside the world's deadliest machines and the science that makes them tick, hit that subscribe button and join us. We have many more monsters left to decode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next orbit.